Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1987 family comedy movie titled Harry and the Hendersons. Well, it could have been more of a family comedy if there wasn't for a little bit of swearing here and there. There is some foul language in this movie. Hell, even the kid, the young son, also drops a few potty mouth usage in this movie. Yeah, I know. He shouldn't do it, but fuck it. Anyhow, the runtime of this movie is 1 hour and 15 minutes long. It is directed by William Dear. It has pretty much William Dear's handprints all over it. He also wrote the script, co-written, along with William E. Martin and Ezra Rappaport. It is produced by William Dear and Richard Vane. It is composed by Bruce Brofton, the cinematography by Alan Davio, and it was edited by Don Camburn. And the stars of the movie are John Lithgow, Melinda Dillon, Kevin Peter Hall, Margaret Langrick, Joshua Rudoy, Don Ameche, Lainie Kazan, David Suchet, Emmet Walsh, William Ontiveros, William Dear, Laurie O'Brien, John Bloom, Debbie Carrington, Britches, that's the dog, William Frankfather, and Robert Isaac Lee. Plus, also special credits go out to the creators of the Harry costume, and it was done by special effects artist Rick Baker, along with puppeteers from Tom Hester, Tim Lawrence, and providing the voice of Harry, the growls and the sound effects. That credit goes out to Fred Newman. Now, what did I think of this movie? Well, sure, I'm assuming that everyone has heard of the legend of one of the greatest mysteries of the wilderness. Whether you want to call him the Sasquatch, whether you want to call him Yeti, the Abominable Snowman, or Bigfoot. Many people have often had their own interpretations of who this mysterious Bigfoot is. He's a massive, tall, hairy creature that has almost like a hybrid between an ape and a human. Like a human, it walks in a rather erect position, although there has been these urban legends that they too, just like the apes, or there be the orangutans, the chimpanzees, the gorillas, they too also can either walk on their 2 feet, and it could also be said that they can even crawl on all fours. But more often than not, they tend to stand more upright and walk in a very similar pattern like us humans, except for the distinguished characteristics. They have very big feet. And sure, there has been a lot of negativity depicted as monsters who kidnap campers and kill them for food, leaving them without a trace. But when you think about it, that's what it is. It's an urban legend, which could mean maybe they do exist, but there's no concrete evidence to convict. Sure, the closest they've ever thought of seeing a Bigfoot was that old 1967 video of a guy capturing Bigfoot on camera, but I tend to debunk it. I think it's some guy dressed up in a fucking ape costume, because he also stares into the guy filming and just walks casually. Should these creatures come up and rip the shreds out of gawkers, out of these gawkers, they should have. He should have mauled them That would have been that could have been real concrete proof and evidence that Bigfoot exists. But no, he's just walking casually. It's like, come on, let's be rich, let's be famous. Let us put on a monkey suit, think that you're Bigfoot, and then when you go deep into the forest, I want you to take the suit, burn it, and then let's come back to the cabin for lunch. That's what I think probably would have happened. And then they were like, we're gonna get them back. That's what I think. I think that whole video of that 1967 capturing a Bigfoot is pure, unadulterated bullshit. It's a guy in an ape suit, and I know it. And how do we even know these guys are actually bad people? How do we know that these Bigfoots are monsters? What if they're not monsters? We don't know that for sure. But what if they're really not as bad as we have thought them out to be? Oh, maybe they're friendly and have been misunderstood by our myths and our beliefs because we've been indoctrinated into believing that these big, giant, hairy motherfuckers maul us to death. We don't know that for sure. Oh, and they also and their main habitats in the Pacific Northwest. So we're thinking, places like Oregon or Washington State, which is ironically the setting of where this movie takes place. Yeah, and we just want to believe that they're a bunch of hideous beasts, but maybe when you think about it, maybe it's not them that's the monsters. Maybe the monsters are us. What if we capture Bigfoot? What are we gonna do? Kill it? If we go out and we kill a Bigfoot, we're the monsters, not them. So that's kind of what Harry and the Hendersons might want us to believe. So whether you call him Bigfoot or Sasquatch, Yeti, the abominable snowman, you can call them whatever you want, but the Hendersons will prefer to just stick to calling him Harry. So in the opening scenes, we have the Hendersons. They're going out on a hunting trip because the head patriarch of the family, George Henderson Jr., played by John Lithgow, he's a hunting enthusiast. And, he goes out, hunting using because, his father runs a sporting goods store and they're very successful in hunting rifles. So, the opening scenes, they have him and his son Ernie. They're going out camping, hunting, and, the opening scenes, they got them killing a wascally wabbit. Yeah. They sure like to, George just seems to be somewhat interested in using rifles. He's an enthusiast. Of course, one of these days he likes to try to hunt for big game so that his rifles and his bullets could make a killing. Get it? Rifles killing? That's dark. Yeah. And his son, he's just as trigger happy as his father. Whereas the female members of the group, Mother Nancy, played by Melinda Dillon, and daughter Sarah, played by Margaret Langrick, well, they don't seem to be that enthusiastic. In fact, they seem to be quite put off by their little hunting exhibitions. So they capture small game and test their rifles. They kill a little wabbit. And then one day they inadvertently ran over something that wasn't a rabbit. They ran over him, knocking him out cold. But what is this him? It looked like a big, giant, hairy beast. Could it be? So, as they were heading home, they tie the beast to the roof of the car, when all of a sudden, the beast awakens, startles the family, and he comes dashing off the windshield. At first, they thought that he was dead, but as it turns out, the Bigfoot was actually only just out cold. When you first see him, he has a striking resemblance to Chewbacca the Wookiee, but instead of making noises like brrr, he's making growling noises. Blah! And at first glance they thought he was dead, but George could have just simply just left him there. I don't know for what. To be dinner to vultures or other assorted scavengers. Gonna be a big feast, that's for sure. Gonna be a big feast, that's for sure. Yeah. The vultures eat that. That's gonna be enough for about food that could last them a month. Anyways, what their plan was to bring the Bigfoot home, because at first they thought he was dead. Maybe stuff him, take out whatever is inside him, replace it, stuff him to his living room. I don't know. I don't know where the fuck you're gonna put a dead Bigfoot. And in hopes that, they could become famous. Have their 15 minutes of fame. We captured one of the biggest mysteries of all. We caught fucking Bigfoot. Sure, the resemblance between Bigfoot and Chewbacca the Wookiee, well, their resemblance is quite uncanny. But I'm sure Chewie never stank so horribly. Yeah, by the way, yeah. In spite of being a big hairy beast, he's also quite a pretty stinky one, too. So when they brought this big, hairy, stinky beast home, they thought he was dead. This gave family head George Henderson Jr., played by John Lithgow, the opportunity to become exposed on daytime and nighttime talk shows. Like, I caught Bigfoot. Now, at first we think he was dead, but then he regains consciousness, and then he does pretty much, we see a majority of the movie of him practically wrecking their house. Partially on purpose, but to serve a purpose, and partially to accidents, because he's one big, clumsy Bigfoot. Not his fault necessarily. I mean, he's huge. And of course, with a huge beast like him, he's bound to cause a bit of destruction. I don't think the Henderson home is Bigfoot proof. So you see Bigfoot, doing things, destructive stuff like flipping over the refrigerator and eating contents from there, having a little snack, to pretty much wrecking the house and in any not on purpose, but he's a bit destructive but not intentionally. Except for when he sees like animal heads mounted on the wall. He doesn't like that. I mean, he sees like a mounted animal of a dead deer, and then he takes the deer head and he starts patting it. He looks at George and he's like, "How could you?" And then he goes outside, takes the deer, and buries it. Yeah, so it appears as though as if maybe this Bigfoot is not a carnivorous animal. In fact, I think he's more of a herbivore. Well, 90% of him is herbivore. He does eat fish. It's the only meat he eats. Yeah, I guess if you're a vegetarian, you might need to have a little bit of protein. A little meat's not gonna kill you. I mean, because so now it looks as though as if Bigfoot has pretty much took over the Henderson home. He runs the gamut, and but not in a malevolent way. He doesn't have any little kind of like bad intentions of any sort. He just is appalled by the idea that George kills animals and mounts them on the wall. And we see him do that many times throughout. Hell, he even buries food, especially meat, in the backyard. Like one time he was ordering burgers, and it appears that Bigfoot does not eat hamburger meat. He also does not eat roasts. Oh, give him a fish burger. There you go. Just give him a fish burger, and that'll satisfy him. Of course, we all know that the Hendersons can't keep this beast in the house. He has to go. He has to go back to the wild. The You can't have him as a pet. Now, of course, George tries his best to tame him, even going as far as to feed him sugar cubes to be on a little more better behavior. His son Ernie seems to enjoy him, thinking that, hey, this is a cool pet. This is fucking awesome. I have a fucking Bigfoot in my home. I'm gonna be the most popular kid in school. And then you get the daughter, Sarah. She is like completely appalled by this monstrosity. She thinks this is gonna be like it's gonna ruin her reputation. Kids at school are gonna fucking throw pig blood on her. I love the part where he actually ate her corsage that she was gonna use for her 16th birthday, and she got all pissed off at him, saying, "You're a bad monster, bad, bad, bad. You're a big, hairy, ugly, smelly beast. You, you fucking ate my corsage. That is you, dumb ape man, whatever you are. I don't like you. You smell bad. You're ugly. And your breath's enough to kill a skunk." Yeah, these people actually have different ways of looking at him. But it's not just the Hendersons that are also on the that that are also involved in this movie. There are a couple of characters too, supporting characters in there too, including Emmet Walsh, who plays George's father, who runs sporting goods store, like I said, played by Emmet Walsh. He of course thinks that the whole idea of having a Bigfoot is cool. Of course, George Henderson never really actually wanted to really actually run the store. He was kind of forced into that business because his father never liked his earlier ambitions. He actually had more aspirations of wanting to become an artist. And he thinks that being an artist is not going to make you famous. What are you going to do? Draw pictures. What's that amount to? That job doesn't mean shit. All I could do is just, so what? You could draw pictures. So what? I used to place little magnets on your walls whenever you used to draw pictures. And then once you got older, I threw these useless pieces of shit away. But then once, the whole Bigfoot craze started to come in, he decided, hey, maybe you might have something out for you. But of course, he wanted his Bigfoot display on the wall artwork to be of a very scary monster. But then George realizes that this is not a scary monster. This is a friendly monster. He's a gentle giant. If I draw a scary picture of him, he would be like, I'd be drawing a picture of his face on a wanted poster. My friend on a wanted poster. So then he wanted to draw Harry the way he sees Harry. As a friendly, kind character. And this is one of the great things about this movie too, is that Harry actually has a lot of emotions in this movie. He's not some one-dimensional actor in a Harry costume. I mean, there's some puppeteering done. There's some special effects to actually give this beast a lot of emotions. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue, but he does produce a lot of emotions. And it's his emotions that actually speak louder than his words. And it just works out really, really well. Really effectively. Of course, a story for this to work out, we also might need to have some villains in the story. I'm not going to say George Henderson Sr. could be passed off as a villain, but more or less just, a passive-aggressive father who never thought likely to his son's artistry, saying that's a waste of time, and that he's working at his father's sporting goods store, and once the whole Bigfoot craze comes in, people just want to go out and buy and purchase rifles and bullets. I mean, big guns. But not big guns because they're illegal. Remember that scene? And then once, he shows the picture of a Bigfoot that resembles Harry, his father was like, you gotta be kidding me. That's your Bigfoot? And then, and then George is like, well, what if Bigfoot is not what you think? Maybe Bigfoot has been just misunderstood all these years because everybody wants them wants to believe that Bigfoot is a scary evil beast, and he says, "Where the fuck did you come up with this shit?" You know, he says something like that. I don't know the exact words, but it's something somewhere along the line. You know, and then once he changes the design and makes it into the scary monster, you know, he then eventually decides, you know what? I quit. And then he's like, you can't quit. I just did. You know, I mean, he actually quit his job just for the sake because he didn't want Harry to be, or the Bigfoot myth to be, you know, about being a scary beast. But like as I mentioned before, there are villains in this story. The main villain is some guy who goes by the name of Jacques Lafleur, played by David Suchet, who who's out after Bigfoot to kill and to stuff and to become famous. I mean, he's been hunting Bigfoot for many, many years. And then you also have a guy who goes by the name of Dr. Wallace Wrightwood, played by Don Ameche, who was some kind of like a scientist or an anthropologist who believed that at one time he thought he caught Bigfoot, but then, you know, everybody else started, you know, debunking his theory, and it came to a point where he just kind of like complied to their debunking, and he became like a skeptic. At first, he thought that George was out of his fucking mind by telling him that there's a Bigfoot in his house. But he says, I will consider coming to your place under one condition. You buy and sell one of my products. Because he's gone from being like a top-notch scientist to a guy who has sort of like a Bigfoot museum and is just selling souvenir of Bigfoot-themed stuff. So George comes out, and he has this whole like Bigfoot lamp or Bigfoot action figures or whatnot, t-shirts, mugs, I don't know. He kind of just has a souvenir shop, I think. So then, you know, he comes over for dinner. Of course, the roast was buried in the yard, so Bigfoot, because Bigfoot buried it. So he's like, "Are you all vegetarians?" And he's like, "Oh, with certain people come over, yeah." Anyhow, I just loved his reaction when Bigfoot was like standing like just right behind him. When he turned around, he let off, "Yes!" He finally saw Bigfoot with his own eyes, and that his eyes were not playing tricks. He wasn't bullshitting with the press. But unfortunately, though, there was, of course, a few scenes there where Bigfoot was kind of like being told to let go, but there was scenes of him like running away from the city. Yeah, there was. I mean, because let's face it, you have to come to an understanding that Bigfoot just does not belong in the world of the human race. And then once word gets around that Bigfoot has been spotted, everybody's out trying to buy triggers to make themselves famous and telling all these false lies and all this bullshit that Bigfoot attacked him and this big giant motherfucker destroyed everything. He's also roaming around the city. He's, of course, trying to run away from Jacques Lafleur, and we have this kind of big cat and mouse chase that takes place in the city, including them fighting against each other in a garbage can. George is out looking around for him, He's even making these weird Bigfoot noises. Um, Something like that. And it becomes kind of epical, almost cat and mouse. I can kind of understand that a bit. It's a family theme movie, with the exception of some swear words that is used. There's a bit of foul language there that makes me think it's got a family film gist to it, with the exception of some swear words here and there. So I don't know if it was given a PG rating or a PG-13 because of the swearing, but it's not like over the top. Eventually, it ends with Bigfoot not wanting to leave the Henderson home. There's also a heartbreak scene where he tells him like, "Go, get out of here. We don't want you around." He even punches him in the face. I know he didn't want to do it, but he had to. Apparently, and also, the villain of the story, Jacques Lafleur. He tried to. Of course, he had his rifle ready to kill him, but George, tried to stop him. So then George and Jacques almost got into a bit of a fight, and Bigfoot is like, "No, we don't do that." Even though maybe this guy deserves to get his deserves to get deserved to might even deserve it, but that's not how we settle things. It's just priceless that his his calmness and his tender ways really do rub onto you quite a bit. Apparently, it ends with George giving his farewell goodbyes to Harry. You know, telling him that he's gonna miss him and that he wants him to take care. Harry then says something like, "Okay," and walks off. And then we see a whole bunch of other Bigfoot Sasquatches running around. Many people only like to think they could go after one Sasquatch or Bigfoot. What if there's more than one? There might be hundreds of them, and we don't know. But everybody always seems like they want to go for just one. I mean, there are great moments of humor, comedy, fantasy, but it does work as a typical 80s but family film of some non-human character making an adopting a creature that's not from our world to live in the same roof. It kind of reminded me a lot like the character Alf back in the 80s as well. He was, of course, an alien from the planet Melmac. He crashes into their garage, and now the Tanners are under the left caring for this alien in hopes that people don't become famous off of them by exploiting them or sending them off to some scientific lab for research where they'll stick needles in him or whatever shit they do there. Things like that. That show lasted for about 4 years. In fact, did you know that Harry and the Hendersons was also made into a TV series back in the early 90s? I wonder how that worked out. Actually, it didn't work out too badly. I was actually surprised it lasted 2 seasons when it probably could have only lasted maybe a few episodes before it was canned. Oh, it worked so well for shows like The Great Outdoors and Uncle Buck, right? Wrong. Uh, for airing the Hendersons, I'm kind of surprised it lasted 72 episodes and lasted 3 years before it was cancelled. It starred Bruce Davison and Molly Cheek. Well, they completely recasted the Hendersons. So yeah, that's pretty much about the movie. The movie was pretty much under the direction of William Dear, using the Amblin Entertainment production team, which is owned by the legend himself, Mr. Steven Spielberg. It teaches small, fragmented subjects related to the beast about how we should treat something that looks like an animal but has more cognitive skills than the average simian. To some, that might be inspirational, but to others, it might also be very saccharine, played way too safe, and even ham-fisted in its details. This movie, of course, was pretty much about anti-guns, and that if you want to capture Bigfoot, it's better to just take a picture to prove to people that he's real, or simply better yet, leave him alone. You don't have to shoot him. In some scenes, it feels like a comedy about a house guest that nobody wanted, almost like Elf, or other movies where a relative moves into your house and pretty much raids the fridge and eats everything and just freeloads, dipping his feet in a wading pool. You know, kind of like the house guest nobody wanted. While at other times, it just feels like almost like a buddy comedy type of thing. So when Harry, plays by Kevin Peter Hall, regains consciousness, we see him rummaging the fridge, eating all the contents, and trashing the kitchen. He poses every bad imitation's intention of a house guest becomes when he almost literally takes over an occupant's house and acts as if they rule the territory. You know, these freeloaders. And we just try to struggle to see how we could get rid of him. Although it's not going to be easy, but then again, house guests that nobody wants, it's hard to get rid of. Dear also co-wrote the script with William E. Martin and Ezra Rappaport. They go out of their ways in providing wonderful comical moments. Plenty of that. John Lithgow is a great comical actor. There's a little bit of some cat and mouse. I mean, sure, Jacques Lafleur can come across almost like a Home Alone type villain. But then again, we've had that a lot in the 80s and 90s. They make Harry scour through the house, redecorating it his way with both his weight and his footsteps, and also getting rid and burying all the prized animal heads that were decorated on their walls. The physical comedy are some of the better moments, like when he's like I said about the mounted deer's head. It leaves a big hole in their wall. He's practically wrecked the home, partially on purpose and other times just by accident. What about, and then of course they also do their parts of trying to hide the monster from the neighbor. Just like Elf. Hey, whenever Trevor and Raquel Achmonic used to drop by at the Tanner's house, Alf always had to either hide in the kitchen or hide in the basement so that the Achmonics don't see him. Well, this movie also has that trope of the nosy neighbor, too. Her name is Irene Moffat, played by Lainie Kazan, who you might know from My Big Fat Greek Wedding movie as Maria Portocalos. Yeah, she's in it. And yeah, there's a lot of comical moments where they're trying to hide the beast from her. You know, I mean, she brings back her dog. She always seems to have some kind of special diets. One of them includes some kind of a peanut butter diet. Like, okay, who in their right fucking mind ever thought of putting peanut butter in the fridge? That is gross. It's just gonna destroy the bread. Peanut butter should not be put in a fridge, okay? Let's just put that clear. Anyhow, yeah. Of course, you know, George tries his best to hide the beast from her. You know, she's always seems to like show up at the door. I never really quite got too much into her character because I found her to be somewhat annoying, but played off for, I guess, effective comic relief. But I found her to be a bit annoying at times. I mean, I think that if we would have just excluded her from the movie, nobody would have really given a fuck. But she drops in quite frequently, tries to borrow stuff from the Hendersons. She also tries to talk about, like, why is it that there are king-sized giant pieces of shit in her pool? Yeah, apparently Bigfoots leave out king-sized 6 foot tall ploppers. Yeah. I mean, there was another funny scene where he was snooping in on a neighbor, and they were putting like a chicken in a cooking pot, and then he reacts when he notices an elderly couple going into a hot tub, and and it just pretty much scares him away. That was pretty funny. You know, there are a lot of vintage classic comedy scenes in this. That, you know, at least I mean, for a movie that's an hour and 50 minutes long, which I think might be a little too long for kids to sit through, it could have been just reduced or downsized to a 90-minute thing. They would have took Irene out of the fold. I don't think she would have been missed. But I guess, you know, for a comedy like this to be almost faced like a situation comedy where they have nosy neighbors, she would actually be kind of playing that kind of role. But I don't think she would have been needed in there. But oh well, who am I? I mean, in the early scenes, you might get impression that Harry has the physical attributes that reign synonymous to a fairy tale character that would make the brothers Grimm green with envy. He has a sight for sore eyes, and that's taken with the highest compliments, sporting a white beard, human-like teeth, albeit a bit bigger and wider smile, and facial expression that could at some points melt your heart and at other times annoy you. I mean, his his report mostly just comes from his emotions. When we're first introduced to Harry, you get the feeling of unease. Very similar as when you're first introduced to Sloth from the Goonies. Remember, when you first see Sloth in the Goonies, you think, what the hell is that? Or who the hell is that? Or what the hell is that? But then it turns out he's not so bad. He's misunderstood. How would you feel if your family, your own flesh and blood, took you to a basement and tied you to shackles just because you're physically deformed and maybe even not so well in terms in cognitive ways either. Although he's not as stupid as he looks. Okay, that's a little cruel. He wasn't that bad of a person. But it's all about one of those you can't judge a book by its cover type of thing. I mean, they're both very scary and intimidating at first. But just like Sloth from the Goonies, Harry is also revealed to be a sensitive, misunderstood, well, in this case of Sloth, it's an individual. In this case of Harry, a misunderstood creature. The fear we had with him at first rapidly disappears, and we get adjusted to this lovable beast. And we hope that we can find some happiness between him and the rest of the Henderson clan. They all seem to come across as likable. Hell, even Sarah herself also softens up to him once he gives her a whole row of flowers, which of course he stole from Irene's yard. Yeah, and even I started to take a liking to her. I didn't like her at first, but she also just probably just she also sort of softened up to me as well. Like in the traditional value of family-based films, Harry and Henderson likes to inject a myriad of moral lessons and tackles lessons that vary from not judging a book by its cover to the respect and care for wilderness animals and their habitations. Not to mention, Harry is a vegetarian, so the beauty of nature is demonstrated here, which was ham fisted quite frequently. Well, he's not a full vegetarian, he eats fish. But when it comes to the human characters who are pretty much background characters to the Beast, well, except for maybe John Lithgow, they are actually quite ordinary cliches. Melinda Dillon is Nancy. She's just a typical mother, wife, and many of those roles can be done to death. She could be casted by other actresses and they would have just played the same role. She's not playing anything new or special. She's quite one dimensional. I mean, no disrespect to Melinda Dillon. I mean, I liked her in the Christmas Story. She had more dimension to her character, but here, she's just a mother. John Lithgow is wonderful in comic timing, and he turns in maybe even one of the better performances, maybe sometimes even better than Harry. But he has the same integrity as one of those Disney dads. The rest of the cast are pretty much either wooden in performance or very cartoon-like, especially the main villain, Jacques Lafleur. The only other character who might have some level of presence, and he's playing a supporting role here, but Don Ameche as the Bigfoot expert, Dr. Wrightwood. He also turns in a fairly good performance. Although his presence is like a last second addition, he still manages to add some likability to his character. And, I mean, hats off to Don Ameche. I mean, here's a guy who's been acting since back in the vaudeville era. Yes, he goes back that far. And then by the time you get around to the 80s, he pretty much had a resurgence in his career and began to act a lot more frequently and was turning in pretty good performances late in his life. He continued to be that way well up until his death in 1993. I mean, he wasn't getting as much recognition in his early years. It was in his later years where he was starting to show this guy's been overlooked. Hell, he even won an Oscar in 1985 for his performance in Cocoon for best actor in a supporting role. Almost similar, like Jessica Tandy, who had a resurgence in her acting career late in her life. With the Driving Miss Daisy. She had something like that. It goes to show you that even though Hollywood loves to cater to younger people, older actors and actresses can also find a resurgence in their careers. Think of last year, Brendan Fraser, who won this year's performance in The Whale. I mean, he's been kind of pretty much out of the limelight for quite a substantial period of time. He comes back and performs in The Whale, and I believe he won an Oscar. I think it was Best Actor in a Leading Role, or was it supporting? I don't remember. But he won an Oscar. No, it was leading. Supporting role was Jonathan Ke Quan. Yes, that's right. I'm talking about Short Round and Data. Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Data from the Goonies. Yes, that's right. Freaking Data won an Oscar that year. Anyways, I'm going off topic. But I'm just saying, and I thought Don Ameche did quite a good job in his performance. He actually has some dimension. He's not on a lot, but he's very effective in his performance, and I truly find that admirable. A special praise goes out to cinematographer Alan Davio, who truly captures the suburban landscapes just outside the Seattle area. We get some views of the city itself. But at times it does feel like a TV sitcom than it does feel like a movie. Ironically, this movie would lead to a sitcom, which failed to garner fan base because the poor ratings explains that there. Even though I'm surprised it lasted 72 episodes, which I guess is a little bit better than compared to other movies transforming to TV shows. Uncle Buck tried that. The Great Outdoors had a TV series. I'm sure there were other ones too that failed miserably. This one didn't fail miserably because it lasted 72 episodes, but it didn't really gain the popularity ratings. I mean, it's like this is just an Alf ripoff. And people have often said that movie. The movie itself is really not set entirely on comedy and laughter, but more towards enlightening its audience. There's a lot of moral lessons to be learned here. It doesn't try to be preachy, although sometimes it fails to reach that lack of preachiness. The mission was pretty much to reflect that the unknown doesn't need to be scary, and that it's only our ignorance towards the unknown that makes things scary. It takes time to understand the unknown instead of assuming what might be much less scary than we all think. And I think that we could learn a lot from this movie. So I would highly recommend you all to see Harry and the Hendersons. Don't get your expectations too high, but it's still an enjoyable family comedy. There's a little bit of swearing here and there, but I'm sure a child has heard those words before. But just keep that in mind in case your children is sensitive and you don't want them to start using adult language. But when all that's said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Harry and the Hendersons from 1987 a 7.5 out of 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.